This is the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast, presented by Massage Envy, the first podcast devoted entirely to Arkansas baseball. Featuring insight from Arkansas baseball color analyst Bubba Carpenter. Here's Matt Jones.
Arkansas coming off a 2-1 weekend. They beat Eastern Illinois in a series at Baum-Walker Stadium. Won the first two games really handily. It won 13-2 on day one, 10-3 on day two. And it looked like they were going to win the game on Sunday. They were up in the seventh inning, and then the wheels just absolutely fell off. 10 runs in the seventh and eighth innings allowed by the Arkansas bullpen, and they lost that game 12-3. Almost got run rolled on their home field. Almost unimaginable for this baseball team. The Razorbacks come back this week. They're going to play Illinois State on Wednesday. Just for clarification, we're recording this before the Illinois State game is played, and then Arkansas is going to play Wright State this weekend. Matt Jones with Bubba Carpenter. And Bubba, I thought Arkansas played really well for 2.5 games against EIU. Even pitched pretty well. I mean, you think about up until the seventh inning of Sunday's game, they had only given up 6 runs the entire weekend. And I'm not saying that it's right, but it's kind of human nature to forget about all the good things that have happened when your bullpen just implodes the way that Arkansas's did there at the end of that EIU game. It's one of those deals where I have to imagine as a baseball player, you want to get back on the field as soon as you can. And these guys have had to have about 72 hours to stew on that loss.
Yeah, that makes it tough. These guys would have loved to have got right back out there and played another game on Sunday after that loss. But, that's the game of baseball. And I'll tell you, Matt, the last thing I said when I went off the air Saturday or Sunday after the loss was baseball is a crazy game. It'll beat you down if you let it. You got to take a game like Sunday and, you can focus on all the negatives or you can focus on all the positives. There were a lot of positives in that game. The fact that Hunter Holland came out, struggled early, was able to put it together and really dominate there for a few innings is a really good sign. I thought Parker Coyle came in, he gave up a couple of 0-2 hits, but he really battled and showed some toughness for a freshman, able to get out of the inning. So you see a lot of good things in there. You saw some good at bats. Reese Robinette has some really good at bats where he drove balls to left field, stayed on a breaking ball or stayed on a change. I believe it was a changeup away, drove it 95 right at the left fielder. But just there were a whole lot of good things in there. Some good plays on defense. You could take a lot of positives away and just, think about the negatives. We blew a bunt coverage, just a couple of bonehead plays, but you learn from those mistakes and move on. But there's a lot of positives to take out of the whole weekend. So overall, hey, I like the direction we're going.
Arkansas fell 2 spots in the coaches poll this week. They're number 8. I don't know that that's so much about the Sunday loss. They were jumped by Wake Forest, who hasn't lost a game yet, and by Vanderbilt, who won a series against UCLA over the weekend. Arkansas and Vanderbilt separated by about 6 points in the poll, basically a toss-up between those two teams. Poll doesn't really matter right now, but just kind of gives you an indication of what they're thinking about Arkansas nationally. You mentioned the positives in that series, and I think maybe the biggest thing you can take away, at least from a position standpoint, has been the play of Jace Borfin. Looked incredible during that series against EIU, and you look back in the numbers, and he played really well against Oklahoma State too. Had a nice game against Grambling. He goes into this game against Illinois State in the midweek, leading Arkansas in batting average with a .450 average. He's leading Arkansas with a 1321 OPS. He's either tied or has the team lead in walks and stolen bases, a number of other categories. And it seems like that 5-hole has been kind of the magic spot for Arkansas. It was Jared Wagner for the first couple of nights in Arlington. They moved him to the 3-hole. Now they've moved Borf into the 5-hole, and he's really contributed quite well.
Well, I love, the batting average. You don't look at batting average a whole lot this early in the year, but you're right. What he's been able to do has been really, really good. What I like is the fact that he's hitting to all fields. He's staying on those balls and driving them to left center. But then when they make a mistake, he's able to pull it. One of the best balls he hit the other night was a line drive off the right field fence, where there was a little bit of confusion. He ended up getting a single out of it. But, he was 3 for 4. He should have had 3 doubles that night. But he hit the ball one to left center, and then pulled that ball to right field. And then, just the bomb that he hit on Sunday was just a colossal bomb. I think it said it was 106 off the bat. I want to say the TrackMan had it at 379, but
That's
man,
right.
that ball had to have gone farther than that. It was absolutely crushed. So, but just kind of taking what the pitcher's given him, and we knew that's what he was capable of, and so it's good to see that. Hopefully, we'll keep that up because that's a huge force to have in the middle of that lineup.
I thought that ball was going to land at Foghorns. It went so far up in the air. And you look at the people out there on that Mackey's bases loaded landing. I mean, they were looking up at the home run ball. And so, it landed somewhere up on top of, at least on top of, if it didn't go over the top of the Hunt Center. I was a little surprised, like you were, the 379-foot distance that TrackMan gave it.
Yeah, I think he got cheated there, but at the end of the day, hey, it was a bomb. It was a good swing. The pitcher, credit that pitcher. He didn't make a whole lot of mistakes, but he left that pitch up over the zone, and Jace really put a good swing on it. And boy, you want to see that out of a guy in the middle of the lineup. But I say a lot, Matt. Anyone can jerk a home run pull side over the fence. Some of my best favorite swings that he took over the weekend were those ones that he drove to left center, left center, getting a slider down and away and driving that ball to left center. That's hitting right there. And so he showed a really good approach this weekend, patient at the plate, not expanding the zone, chasing balls out of the zone. So hopefully he can keep that up. Hitting's contagious. So hopefully more guys around him are going to start to do the same thing.
How much do you think the success that these Wegner for the first couple of games and Borfin since then having in the 5-hole has to do with what Brady Slavens has been doing in the cleanup? He's been, I don't think he has a home run yet this year, but at one point he had a double in 4 consecutive games. He's doing a pretty good job of getting on base. Do you think the success that he's having impacts what the 5-hole hitters are seeing?
Oh, absolutely, because Brady's been on base a ton this year. And I still say in this year's game with a pitch clock, of course, it wasn't really a factor this weekend. They seem to be starting the clock a little bit later at Baum Walker than they were at Globe Life Field. So the pitchers seem to have a little bit more time, but you get a runner on base, that pitcher's got to speed things up a little bit. And I think it's really helping that 5-hole hitter, get more good pitches to hit. Now, you got to take the borderline pitch and not chase pitches to get the good pitch. And that's what those guys have been doing. So it's good to see. But man, I've been really impressed with Brady Slavens. Just a lot of times he'll go up there and he'll swing at the first pitch and roll over something to second base. He showed a ton of patience so far early in this year. Of just getting pitches in his zone and driving them. It looks like he's making a conscious effort to stay on the ball, center, left center also, early in the year. Even his batting practice rounds, he could hit every pitch over the building if he wanted to. But in BP, he's staying more center, left center, just trying to work inside the ball, but work inside the ball with authority, not serve it out there to left, drive it to left center.
Let's talk about the 3 games against CIU. Arkansas won in game 1 by a final score of 13-2. They run ruled the Panthers with a 6-run 7th inning that was capped by a 3-run home run by Kendall Diggs. I said something to Kendall afterward. I said, this is the second time you've had a 3-run home run that's ended a game here. A little bit different field than the last one, Bubba, when he beat Ole Miss last April.
Hey, and that's another guy. You look at what Kendall did on that pitch. He stayed inside that ball, stayed behind it. Yeah, I love something that Nate Thompson talks about. He talks about pulling the ball to opposite field. It's a mindset, and it's a way where you don't just serve the ball out there and slice it to the left fielder. And that's what Kendall Diggs did on that pitch. Boy, he stayed behind it, drove that ball to left center, just kept going. It was a beautiful swing. And that's what we need Kendall to do is to, if you can stay on pitches like that, Matt, and drive them to left center, that pitcher has to come into you. And then when you come into a left-handed hitter at Baum Walker, that Hunt center's right there. You play pepper with that Hunt center. So, but in order to do that, you got to prove that you stay on the ball and drive it the other way first.
Arkansas had 2 6-run innings in that game. And then Hagen Smith, I thought, pitched really well. 4 2/3, gave up 3 hits. He had 3 walks, and that drove up his pitch count a little bit. He ended up throwing 97 pitches. Didn't quite make it, to the 5 innings to qualify for a traditional win, but they gave him the win anyway because of the pitch count. What did you think about him?
Well, I said on the air, when they took him out, I said, look, it's amazing to me because I didn't think he had his best stuff. He wasn't, if you ask Hagan, he'll say, I didn't have all my stuff tonight. Left a lot of balls up in the zone, was really deep in a lot of counts, had trouble putting hitters away, but he didn't give up any runs. 4 2/3 inning, didn't give up any runs. For a guy to not have his best stuff and still do what he did is just says how special he is. Because look, EIU, they've got some veteran guys, and I don't know if you got out there for BP, and you can tell a lot about a team of BP. You get your 5 o'clock Cowboys that just go up there and just yak, and they're just pulling everything out of the yard. But EIU had some veteran guys, and I was watching BP. They're driving balls over the fence right center. And the wind's blowing in from right field. So they're driving balls. They got some good hitters in the lineup. You make a mistake, they'll hurt you. And we saw that on Sunday. But I thought Hagan did a good job not having his best stuff, able to gut through it and get through 4 2/3 and shut the team out.
Yeah, Ryan Ignoffo, I'm not sure where he ended last year, but I know at one point last season he was top 5 nationally in batting average. And so they had a lot of veteran hitters back, players who, we had seen before, or at least some players. I know Blake Malatestinik, the pitcher on Friday, he was the one who had given up the grand slam to Heston Kjerstad. There were a few names like that that I remember from the previous years when EIU had come here to Fayetteville. Arkansas won 10-3 on Saturday. Will McIntyre gave him a nice start, 4 2/3 innings. It was nice to see him bounce back. Only gave up 1 run in his outing, walked a couple of players, gave up a couple of hits, struck out 4. Again, pitch count got him, and he wasn't quite able to make it to 5 innings. He threw 85 pitches. But when you look at where McIntyre had been the first 2 games, it was good to see that. He said afterward that DJ Baxendale and Matt Hobbs had gotten with him during the midweek bullpen session, and they basically had told him that his arm slot had fallen, and that was really affecting the way or where his pitches were being located in the zone. They did a little tweak with him, got him thrown back to more of an overhanded positioned, and it worked for him.
Well, it's funny, Matt, because I said after the game, Hobbs walks by and I give him a thumbs up, say, hey, good job. I like it. And he goes, well, I didn't do anything, and then the next day I said kind of the same thing to him. It's like, hey, good job with McIntyre. And once again, he's like, well, I didn't do anything. But he did. Him and DJ. That's the thing. If you look around the SEC, a lot of guys are passing up the draft to go to the SEC because there's so much technology. I mean, we've got stuff here to develop pitchers that major league clubs don't have. And it's one thing to have all that technology. It's another thing to have a guy or multiple guys that know how to use that technology to make your players better. They looked at the stats. They realized that, Will McIntyre's ball is flattened out a little bit. Everything's belt high. What's going on? So they compare video. They realize his arm slots drop. They raised it up a little bit, and he was a totally different pitcher. Now, was he as good as he was last year? Not quite, but I tell you what, he was way better. If you're looking at TrackMan, he didn't leave very many balls over the middle of the plate. He was at the top of the zone or the bottom of the zone and just had a knack for missing barrels, and that's what he did last year. And I give a lot of credit to the coaching staff for seeing it, but hey, you got to give Will McIntyre a lot of credit also because he's the one. It's hard, Matt, to make an adjustment like that midweek. You can throw a Wednesday bullpen and say, okay, get your arm slot up a little bit. That's not that easy to do when you've been doing it all fall from down here. So hats off to Will McIntyre for making that change, believing in the process, going out there and executing it on Saturday. And it's a huge piece to have him back in there. And it'll be interesting to see how he does this Saturday. I think he's just going to keep getting better from here on.
A couple of notes about response. We've talked about this, you and I have before. McIntyre, he gives up the home run at the top of an inning. I don't remember if it's the 3rd, 4th inning. But then he bounces back. I think it's like a 2-pitch at bat, and before you know it, he's out of the inning. And he seems like he does a really good job of that, not allowing that one big swing to affect him. And we've talked about this. The way that he pitches, there are going to be home runs that he gives up. The key is, are you going to give up a solo home run or are you going to give up a 3-run home run? Big difference, obviously, between those two. And then, from an offensive perspective for Arkansas, one of the things that stood out to me was that every time EIU scored in that second game, Arkansas had an answer in the bottom of the inning. Third inning, EIU scores one, Arkansas scores one in the bottom. Seventh, the same thing. Eighth inning, EIU scores a run, Arkansas comes back with 5 runs in the bottom of the inning and is really able to put the game away. And I thought that's kind of how the weekend went. I don't know that the scores really reflect how closely these two teams played. But, in the first 2 games, Arkansas made the plays late at the plate to be able to pull away. And then on Sunday, it was EIU.
Hey, you're right. And that's what the good teams do. I mean, if the team scores, you want to answer in the bottom half of that inning when you're in your home ballpark. And I thought we did a good job of that, well, except for Sunday. And, Sunday, that game changed in the 7th inning. I mean, we were cruising. I thought we had the game in the bag. I loved where our bullpen, we were set up perfectly. We had Adcock, we had Gage Wood. I mean, I thought we were in a perfect spot, and that's the game though. It can change really quick on you. And we saw how that happens on Sunday.
Let's talk about the bullpen for a minute because it was Cody Adcock, Zach Morris, and Gage Wood who gave up the bulk of the runs in the 7th and the 8th innings. With Adcock, he was a pitch away from getting out of it and then just hangs an 0-2 breaking pitch that goes for a 2-run home run. And, kind of the floodgates open from there. Morris has been inconsistent. We're going to see him in the midweek against Illinois State. Wood has been up and down. I mean, this is the second time that he's had a 10-pitch outing where he wasn't really able to throw strikes at all. But in between there, Bubba, he had a good outing in the finale against Oklahoma State in Arlington. Had a pretty good outing in the first game of the series against EIU. The consistency, I think, with all 3 of these pitchers is really I don't know if baffling is the right word, but that's the key to me right now. Is just there's a lot of inconsistency with them because even with Morris, you saw him come out in Texas and pitch really well for a few innings against TCU, but then he's had the bad stuff. How do you find consistency right now with these arms that are clearly going to have to be some of your top line arms out of the bullpen?
Well, I think a guy like Zach Morris just has to figure it out. I mean, he didn't have a great fall or early spring, but he's a guy that's more of a prime time guy. When the lights come on, he's there for you. He proved it last year, what he's capable of doing. It's a matter of figuring it out. And look, some of these guys, they'll give Zach Morris, he's a veteran guy, they'll give him a little more leeway because he's a guy that can come in and start. He can come in early if someone's struggling early, he can eat up some innings. There's multiple roles, or he could just come in late in the game and get a high leverage situation and get you out of it against a couple tough lefties. He can do all those things, but boy, we need him to figure it out. But he just was not good on Sunday, just mentally. You look at the bunt coverage that we messed up. There were a couple of them, just simple little plays. He pulled Brady off the bag on just an easy toss to first base. He looked to second, thought about throwing there, and then re-engaged to first and just kind of lobbed it over there and pulled Brady off the bag. Yeah, I think the guy beats it out regardless, but that's more mental stuff. As far as Cody Adcock, here's the thing. Cody's got elite stuff. And when you're that good, you think you can get out with every pitch. And I know people get tired of hearing me. And if Matt Hobbs probably gets tired of me asking him questions about it. But we give up a whole lot of 0-2 hits. And I get it. We're in attack mode. Our pitchers are in attack mode. They believe in their stuff. But when your stuff's as elite as Cody Adcock, you cannot give up an 0-2 home run to Ignafo. Ignafo steps out. I mean, he's looking to do what he did. He opens up, he steps out. Mechanically, if a hitter opens up like that, there's certain things that the barrel of your bat does. Your body can't do anything different. And boy, that hanging breaking ball 0-2 to Knopfel, that one hurt right there. 2-run homer. There were 2 outs when it happened. Boy, you got to elevate a fastball right there. His hands were dropping, elevate a fastball, bounce a slider down and away. And I know he's not trying to hang it. And look, these are college kids. They're going to make mistakes. Major league pitchers make mistakes, Matt. But boy, we got to be better in that situation. I thought we gave up, probably 5 hits with 0-2 counts, a couple more with 1-2 counts on pitches that are they're not pitchers' pitches. Now, you don't want to just throw it to the backstop and make a non-competitive pitch, but we got to do a better job of burying that pitch or elevating a fastball. I'm always a big fan. Cody throws 93 to 95, elevate a fastball, then come back and throw a breaking ball after that. Just anything to get the hitter off that breaking ball. He had already thrown 2 early in the count to Ignacio, but look, he's going to be fine. I'm not worried about Cody Adcock. I tell you what, I love his stuff. I love his mound presence. He's going to be fine. But, Zach Morris is one that I'm a little bit more worried about. I want him to start putting it all together. Hopefully tonight he'll do that. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Matt Hobbs had mentioned in the preseason that, Morris kind of had this similar start last year, and it was really late March, early April, whenever things began to click for him. Maybe he can have a repeat of that. 2 weeks left, or 2 weekends left before Arkansas plays its first SEC games against Auburn in mid-March. They play Wright State this weekend. They play Louisiana Tech next weekend. They've got some really good midweek games in between there, by the way. Illinois State is a team that has been pretty good in the Missouri Valley over the last few years under Steve Holm. You get Army coming in next week. That's the Patriot League champion from last year. In 2 weeks, UNLV, a team that a lot of people like in the Mountain West this year. So it's a really good schedule here throughout the rest of this homestand in Fayetteville. But I say all that to say this: it feels like these next 2 weeks are going to be really important to find a steady lineup offensively. It's been a lot of tweaks, it seems like, day to day, whether it be, a new catcher rotating in. They're going to play Hudson Polk and Parker Rowland quite a bit, both of them, I think. But, third base has been a place where there's been a lot of, rotating in and out. Even in the game against EIU on Sunday, you saw Kendall Diggs not play, and he's been a good DH for the Razorbacks at this point. Where do you think we stand with the lineup right now, Bubba, and some of those positions, I guess maybe especially third base? What do you think we might see over the next 2 weeks there?
I think we're in a point right now, Matt, where, DVH and the staff, they're kind of putting that formula together still. And I don't think they've quite figured out who goes where yet to make this team the best it can be. There's still a lot of guys battling certain positions, and they haven't, the guys haven't, like, you look at third base, no one's really stepped up and made that jump to be say, this is our starting third baseman. I will say Caleb Kelly had better at bats Saturday. Drew Walk is first at bat. Second at bat, he had an 0-2 fastball. He popped it up to shortstop, but if the fastball was at the top of the zone, and look, a quarter of an inch on the bat, and that's a home run. If that ball's down 3 inches, it's probably gone. It was a really good swing, just got under it. Next at bat, he popped up a high fastball to second base. Once again, just missed it. Had that ball been a little bit down in the zone, I think he crushes that ball to right center. So really good swings out of him. So I think he's close to getting back to where he was. I love Jason Jones. Man, he's athletic. He's got power. Love the way he swings it. Brady Slavin's played on Friday night. Brady made a couple of good plays. First play hit to him was a tough play, moving in into his left, came in, good footwork, got a short hop, made a good throw. I don't think that's our answer, but I think Brady's a guy that can, if they've got to do some, pinch hitting late in the game, they can move Brady over there to play an inning or two. But I mean, there's so many guys, and you know who I really did? Reese Robinette. I already talked about he came in and took some really good swings against a right-handed pitcher that was kind of, we were scuffling with a little bit, mixing in his fastball and his changeup, drove a couple balls to left center. Now with the infield in, he did let one go through his legs, but that ball's hit 98 on wet grass, and that ball just shot through like a rocket through his legs. I think he makes that play 9 times out of 10. So there's just so many things. But hey, I do want to say something about the Sunday game. Even though the bullpen struggled, we gave up a lot of runs. We had some balls hard, Matt, against our starter. We really did. Against Kai Hampton, we hit, I think, 8 balls over 95 miles an hour. 7 of them were for outs. The only hit was Jace Borfin's 106 home run. Mm-hmm. The rest of them were outs. I mean, and then several balls hit in the 92, 93 range. So we really did hit some balls hard at them. Now, that doesn't change what the bullpen did, but some of those balls get down, get in a gap. It's a totally different game. But that's the game of baseball.
Well, I thought their defense played really well on Sunday, and I'm talking about EIU. There was the catch at the left center field wall that at least took an extra base hit away from Robinette, the one that you mentioned, maybe a home run. Their second baseman made a great play early in the game that robbed someone of a hit up the middle, or between second and first. So there were a lot of plays like that stood out to me. And then, maybe he was a little bit of a prisoner of the moment, but Jason Anderson, the EIU head coach, said he thought it was the best pitched game in the history of the program by Kai Hampton.
Well, that's a little bit of a stretch. I mean, if you go back and really look at how many balls we hit hard, yeah, you got to win. It's a big win for their school, but yeah, I don't know. I think that's a stretch, but hey, he was excited at the end of the game. Maybe he got a little carried away, but maybe it was. I mean, hey, he did throw some really good changeups. We did make a lot of first pitch outs where we did not hit the ball over 95. There were a few balls hit 50, 60, 70 miles an hour on changeups down in the zone that we got to tighten that up a little bit. But I think a lot of that's young guys getting in there and trying to do too much to impress Dave Van Horn. And, it happens. And the guy you get tip your hat. He did a good job changing speeds. I was just impressed with how we did still manage to hit some balls hard.
Arkansas didn't have a leadoff hitter on in any inning against EIU on Sunday. Really hard to get your offense going when that's the case. Peyton Stovall missed a game on Friday, injured his thumb on his glove hand. That's also his power hand when he's batting, Bubba. And, one of the things that Van Horn mentioned after that game was that he'd been improving for a couple of days after he injured it, sliding into a base against Grambling State last Tuesday. But when he went to, hold a bat on Friday, he was kind of having some trouble gripping that bat. And then even when he came back for the final two games of the series, didn't look like he really looked all that comfortable at the plate, had a lot of strikeouts, which is, really abnormal for Peyton. How much do you think the thumb injury can affect a hitter, from how can a thumb injury affect you from a hitting perspective?
Well, when it's your top hand, it can affect you greatly. And you could tell there were a whole lot of, and I talked about it during the broadcast, Matt, how Peyton, he was taking some fastballs belt high out over the plate. Usually that's a ball he can drive to left center and sometimes even pull it to right center in the gap. He was underneath the ball. He was dumping that barrel. You could see the beginning of his swing. You could see the barrel dump. He just didn't have the top hand strength. And, Peyton's not going to make excuses about it. I asked him Sunday about if it was bothering him. And yeah, I think it probably is a little bit. He's not going to talk a lot about it, but you could tell a difference because there were multiple fastballs fouled off to the left side where they're pitches that he normally crushes. Now, there's a way you can cheat your top hand a little bit. It's kind of like golf. If you change your grip just a little bit, it'll affect your shot. It's the same in baseball. You could take your top hand, move it over just a little bit, give you a little more top hand strength to overcome. Now, it's kind of putting lipstick on a pig. Your thumb still hurts and you're losing strength there, but by cheating that top hand a little bit, it'll kind of even things out and get your top hand working again.
One of the things that I thought stood out from the weekend, Bubba, was a comment that Dave Van Horn had made, and maybe it was after the Grambling game last Tuesday. I can't remember exactly when he said it, but he was talking about Parker Rowland and how he's receiving better in games than he did in practice. And, defense, it seemed like it kind of set him and Hudson Polk apart in the preseason. But now maybe they're running a little bit tighter there than they were before the season began, and maybe that's why you're seeing both of them play so much. But I wonder if you could kind of take us through that comment about receiving a baseball, because it may be kind of an undervalued or an area of playing that position that may not be as understood well by fans.
Well, I'll compare it last year to Michael Turner catching Connor Nolan. Connor Nolan had a great year last year. I'll give a little bit of that credit to Michael Turner. Connor's best when he's down in the zone. Michael Turner was great about getting down below the ball, coming up to receive the ball. So a pitch down out of the zone appears to be a strike because he catches it coming up. A lot of catchers catch that two-seam ball and they catch it down. So they kind of box it out of the zone. So a strike turns into a ball versus a ball turning into a strike. And you could see Parker Rowland do that. He with Will McIntyre on the mound, he stole a couple of pitches at the bottom of the zone. I thought he also did against Cody when Cody Frank came in. He got Cody a couple of pitches down in the bottom of the zone where he did a really good job of getting below the ball, bringing it up, making it look like a strike, getting outside, coming in to catch a ball. You want to catch that ball moving into the zone, not moving out of the zone. And he just looked really good back there. And I'll tell you what I also like, it's not part of your question, but I like his throws to second between innings. I watch them both throw. They both throw really good between innings. I like the way Parker Rowland throws from his knees. I think he's quicker from his knees when he throws down to second between innings than he is, when he stands up to throw. And then Hudson Polk looks really good between innings, he puts the ball right on the bag every time. But I think, if you watch Hudson Polk, he's already got 3 pass balls on the year. He's had a little bit of a hard time, letting a few pitches get by him. Some of them are tough pitches, but then some of them are just, I don't know if it's just mental or if the ball just cut at the last minute and he missed it. But, that is an issue that could come back and haunt you in an SEC game.
I think both of these guys playing is no surprise. Van Horn said before the season that you're going to see both of them play quite a bit. And we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. Don't think you're going to have that catcher this year who plays the majority of the games the way Michael Turner or Casey Opitz have done the last several years. I think you're going to see somebody take that position and, become kind of the guy behind the plate. But I think you're going to see more, off and on between the catchers this year than you've seen in the past. The Whole Hog Baseball Podcast is sponsored by Massage Envy, voted the best day spa and the best massage in all of Northwest Arkansas. Visit Mike and his staff in Tuscany Square at 2603 West Pleasant Grove Road in Rogers, or in Fayetteville at 3557 North Shiloh Drive. Massage Envy has services for everyone. MassageEnvy.com.
Massage Envy with clinics in Rogers and Fayetteville has been awarded Northwest Arkansas's Best Day Spa and Best Massage. One of the reasons is our care for athletes, both serious and recreational. We now offer rapid tension relief sessions using a high-caliber vibrating tool and total body stretch sessions like the ones used by the PGA. Both of these new services can be combined with the always popular deep muscle treatment. So whether you compete or just want to relax, there is no place better than Massage Envy.
WholeHogSports.com has the largest, most experienced staff of reporters covering sports in Arkansas. Football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. You'll find it at WholeHogSports.com. The website includes up-to-minute news, daily commentaries, and award-winning photography from the staffs of Hogs Illustrated and the Democrat Gazette. For subscriptions, call 1-800-757-6277. That's 1-800-757-6277. Or visit us online today. WholeHogSports.com.
With almost 30 years in business, the Teague Law Firm can help with most family law and criminal law issues. Call James and the Teague Law Firm at 479-531-2785.
Quick trip around the SEC. Lots of newsworthy items from the last week around the conference. Bubba, probably the most noteworthy was that Tony Vitello was suspended for 3 games against Dayton. Tennessee still won all 3 games with Josh Elander, the former Razorback volunteer coach, serving as the acting head coach. No real reason given for why Vitello was suspended other than just a statement from the athletics department that said a violation within the program. This all came within a few hours of a report by Outkick that Tennessee was involved in a tampering investigation with Maui Ahuna. Ahuna didn't play against Dayton. He was cleared for the midweek game, and now their star shortstop, who's probably going to be a first-round pick this year, he is cleared to play. What are your thoughts on the Tennessee situation?
I think they got caught, Matt, and I doubt that Tennessee's the only school doing it. I think there's a lot of shenanigans going on there at Tennessee, and I think around the country too. So I'll leave it at that. It's just I don't want to get all fired up this morning about that. But I think it's something that's going on, and I think with this NIL transfer portal and these guys getting promised all this money, and I just think there's a lot of stuff going on right now that at some point is going to have to be tightened up a little bit. I think the systems, the system they put in place, it was a good idea. It just hadn't been implemented. It's kind of turning into the Wild West. There's a lot of stuff going on that I don't like, and I think it eventually hurts schools like Arkansas that does things the right way.
Some notable outcomes around the SEC in week 2. There were some big series wins. Ole Miss beat Maryland 2 days in a row after losing the series opener. Vanderbilt took the rubber match against UCLA on Sunday. Mississippi State got beat really bad in the series opener against Arizona State and came back and won its final two. And then on the flip side, Texas A&M had a horrible week. They had that midweek loss to Lamar last week, and then they lost the first two games of a series against Portland. Jim Schlossnagle ended up getting tossed in the ninth inning of the series opener against Portland, and they nearly got swept on their home field in College Station. Which results stood out to you the most?
I think the A&M, I think it really did, almost getting swept at home. I think that was a huge surprise to me. But I still say early in the year, anything can happen. LSU getting blown out. I mean, it's something that happens early in the year, and there's no cupcakes anymore. I mean, there's so many veteran guys in some of these programs that normally go in there and get rolled over. Now they've got veteran guys on their squad, and I tell you, anyone can beat anyone on any night.
I'll tell you, one of the things that stood out to me for the first couple of weeks has been the dominance of some of these transfer pitchers. Like we saw last year, Chase Dollander of Tennessee transfers in from Georgia Southern. He ends up being the SEC Pitcher of the Year. And I think we're seeing something similar right now with LSU and with Florida. Paul Skeens of LSU's got 23 strikeouts through his first two outings this year. And then at Florida, you've got Hurston Waldrop, who was the All-American at Southern Miss last year. He had a 13 strikeout game the other day. It's been really impressive. And I think it's fascinating to see how these SEC coaches go out and they find these diamonds in the rough. Jared Wegner might fit into this kind of category from a position standpoint. Just these guys who were maybe tearing it up at the lower levels and, being able to identify the stuff that makes them work it now at the SEC.
Well, and look at what we did last year with Chris Lanzilli and Michael Turner. Two guys that were kind of overlooked. They turned into two of our leaders, two of our best players last year. You look at Hunter Holland. Of course, I wouldn't call San Jaco a place that's underrated. That's it's a great JUCO. But you look at Hunter Holland. We didn't know he was going to be as good as he is until he got here on campus. So he's a guy that at the end of this year, I think we're really going to be talking about him as somebody that's going to pitch in the big leagues for a long time.
SEC teams in the polls, LSU is number 1, Tennessee is number 2. That's no change from last week. Wake Forest is number 3, mentioned that earlier. Stanford number 4 out of the Pac-12. And then you got a lot of SEC teams in a row: Ole Miss, Florida, Vanderbilt, Arkansas. A&M fell to number 18. And then maybe a little bit of a surprise, and I know it's still early, and I don't think either of these two teams have really played great competition yet. But Alabama and South Carolina both came into the week undefeated, and they moved into the poll this week at number 22 and number 23.
Well, I said there's no cupcakes. They haven't played the schedule that some of these other schools have played. So we'll see what happens when we get a little bit farther along. But hey, you go into this time of year, you're still undefeated. That's saying something. So we'll see what happens. I still say cream rises to the top, Matt. So Razorbacks are just kind of lurking right now. We're putting things together. We're going to be in good shape.
And some games to watch around the SEC this week. Really, the series of the weekend is Florida's going to be playing host to Miami. It's a top 25 matchup there in Gainesville. You got a lot of teams, Bubba, that are playing in these early season showcases. Vanderbilt and Ole Miss, they're both going to go to Minneapolis and play in the Cambria College Classic. They're each going to play 3 Big Ten teams: Nebraska, Maryland, and Minnesota. They're going to be playing in the Minnesota Vikings Stadium. They convert it into a baseball stadium for this tournament every year. Did you ever play in any NFL stadiums?
No, I never did. But that's got to be a lot of fun for the guys to go play there. But no, I never got to.
What's interesting about it is, like a lot of those old stadiums were built for both NFL and major league teams. I think about the Kingdome, for instance, in Seattle, where the Mariners and the Seahawks both played. But now, you don't see that anymore. And so it looks really weird when you convert a stadium that's built just for football into a baseball stadium. It's got a very, odd look to it.
Well, I tell you, I grew up in Winslow. At Winslow back in the day, Winslow Squirrels, we played on a baseball field that was a football stadium. It was track, it was softball, it was soccer. Now, I don't know if you'd call it a stadium. It was more of a pasture. But, hey, we did everything out there. That's the closest I got to it, Matt.
That reminds me, Dave Van Horn, when he was at Nebraska, before they got Haymarket Park built, their baseball stadium also doubled as the practice field for the Nebraska football team. And so I think it was a turf infield and then natural grass in the outfield. They said you would find all kinds of stuff out in the outfield. You'd find mouthpieces and you'd find these divots from where the goalposts would be put in and then taken out. And I think the student paper wrote that it had the charm of a junkyard in Beirut.
Wow, that's some good writing right there.
Texas A&M goes to the Shriners Classic this week at Minute Maid Park. They're going to play Louisville Rice, and Texas Tech. Ought to be 3 good games for them. Mississippi State's going to go down to Frisco. They'll play Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Cal. And then these series, I think, are really interesting, Bubba, what Georgia and South Carolina do. They're both going to play their in-state rivals this week, and Georgia will play at its home field one game, at Georgia Tech one game, and then they're going to play at the Braves AAA Park in Gwinnett. And then South Carolina is going to do the same thing with Clemson, where they'll play at South Carolina one game, Clemson one game, and then they'll play a game at the High A affiliate for the Red Sox in Greenville, South Carolina. I think that's really interesting how those teams do that.
I do too. And Matt, what do you think about these teams playing? It seems like a lot of these teams are starting to buy into playing. DVH has done it for a long time, trying to really play some good teams early in the year for RPI reasons. Do you think more teams are starting to buy into that and say, look, I want to play some good teams early on? It just seems like there's more good competition now early on, where there used to not be that many good games this time of year.
Well, I think teams have figured out how important the RPI is. And, I think there have been a lot of times where teams have gotten bitten by, not playing a good enough schedule. I mean, even Arkansas last year, with what they did with some of their scheduling, where they had too many SWAC teams and they had all of these teams from in-state that didn't perform well throughout the season, and it really hurt them, I think, from a hosting perspective. So, yeah, I think all of that is, really prevalent in coaches' minds. And I like the fact that some of these teams are getting look at what Vanderbilt's doing. They played in Arlington the first weekend. They played UCLA at home last weekend. They're playing 3 pretty quality Big Ten teams this weekend. I love to see teams test themselves like that early in the season. We saw Arkansas do that 2 years ago, and look how good that team ended up being.
Yeah, you're right. I say this year is a good year for us to, with all the new faces we got coming in. I think our schedule is perfect. We played 3 really good teams at Globe Life. Now we're still playing good teams. I mean, look, EIU wasn't a cupcake. I'm sorry. I don't care what you say. They weren't a cupcake. They're going to win a lot of games, I think, this year. But, I think with the way we're trying to put the roster together, and now with kind of the pitching, some of the struggles in the bullpen, I like our schedule right now. Now it's going to get harder this weekend. Louisiana Tech next weekend is going to be a tough weekend. But it'll get us ready for Auburn that final week.
I think coaches always try to schedule with the type of team that they have in mind. And I think you're right. I think that, 2 years ago, I think Van Horn knew he had a little bit more experienced teams scheduled for that. This year. I think you schedule based on where your team is at that point in the season. James Teague has joined his father, Robert, at Teague Law Firm, which has been around for nearly 30 years and was voted the best of Northwest Arkansas in 2019 and 2021. James can help you with most family law matters, including divorce, custody, and child support. He can also help with criminal law, including felony and misdemeanor offenses. If you have an estate need, James at Teague Law Firm can fill your need there too. Teague Law Firm is a full-service law firm where you will talk to actual lawyers. They'll give you their cell phone number, and they'll give you a call back. Call James and the Teague Law Firm at 479-531-2785. That's 479-531-2785, or visit them online at teague-law.com. The Teague Law Firm. If we can't help you, we'll talk baseball.
As a former Razorback pitcher, James Teague spent years closing innings. Now he's closing cases. With almost 3 decades in business, the Teague Law Firm can help with most family law issues and criminal law. Call James and the Teague Law Firm at 479-531-2785 or visit them at teague-law.com.
Want more coverage of your home team? Download the Whole Hog Sports Video on Demand app. Check out the Fan Zone and get up-to-the-minute videos, podcasts, and features on football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. Search for Whole Hog Sports on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire at home. and take it with you on the go by downloading it for your mobile device in your app store. The Whole Hog Sports Video on Demand app. Get it today.
Bubba, Arkansas plays Wright State this weekend, and Wright State comes out of the Horizon League. They're one of the best team in the Horizon League. If you look at it over the last decade or so, they've been in the NCAA tournament 5 of the last 7 years, including the last 2 seasons. You might remember them 2 years ago. They had Tennessee on the ropes in the first game of the Knoxville Regional, and then Tennessee, it's a walk-off home run, and they kind of have their show that they put on after they hit that walk-off. It was really a memorable game in that 21 NCAA tournament. We saw Illinois Chicago come in from the Horizon League last year here in Fayetteville, and Arkansas handled UIC over those games, but there were a couple where UIC gave the Razorbacks a pretty good game, so that may give you a little bit of an indication of the type of competition the Razorbacks are going to face. I kind of look at the Horizon League and I look at it as teetering on that line between mid-major and low-major. And what I mean by that, a low-major conference, I would consider it to be the SWAC, Grambling State, UAPB, or some teams that we've seen come through bomb quite often. Every now and then they'll give you a good game like Grambling gave Arkansas last week, but it seems like more often than not, it's like a 26-1 game that's run-ruled in 7 innings. And I would consider it, a good mid-major conference to be like the Missouri Valley, like Illinois State you're going to see this week, or Missouri State, maybe the Ohio Valley, where you've got Eastern Illinois and SEMO, and UALR now is in the Ohio Valley. It feels like this conference is kind of there on that cut between being mid-major and low-major. But I say all of that to say that this is a Wright State team that's got a lot of experience. They've got some veteran pitchers on the mound, and we expect them to give Arkansas a pretty good test this weekend at Baum-Walker.
I think so, Matt. And you talk about, they've got their whole rotation coming back from last year. The guy that really stands out to me is the Saturday starter, Gongora. I believe that's how you say his name, but he's
Sebastian Gongora.
Yeah, I mean, he's a 6'5" lefty. Really, held Kentucky down last weekend, 5 innings, 1 hit, 2 runs, 4 walks, 4 Ks. His fastball in the fall was up to 96 miles an hour. Don't think that he's pitching there right now. I think he's going to be more, low 90s, but still a 6'5" lefty throwing low 90s, can give you trouble. And then their other guy, their Friday night guy, Shirk, is a 6'5" righty with a good fastball, run it up there in the mid-90s. So, I mean, we're going to see 2 really good pitchers. Their Sunday guy kind of gave it up against Kentucky, but who knows? Maybe it was just a bad outing. And then after that, Kentucky beat down on them on Sunday, but it was kind of like, we did against TCU. We threw in a bunch of guys just to try to get them some innings. They ended up going through 8 pitchers on Sunday, but I think it's going to be a good team. And the thing that stands out for me, you always talk about being strong up the middle. They got a shortstop, Justin Reimer, supposed to be really good. They got a good catcher, a guy back from last year. Sammy Sass is really good behind the plate. So you talk about being a second baseman. They're talking about him being in the draft in 2024, Andrew Patrick. So they seem to be strong up the middle, and they've got pretty good pitching. So when you got that combination, hey, anything can happen.
Sammy Sass, the catcher, he's the preseason player of the year in that conference. Sebastian Gongora, the preseason pitcher of the year. And then this is according to D1 Baseball, the top draft prospects in that conference, the top 3 of them are all from Wright State players that Bubba just mentioned. Gongora, the Saturday starter, Jake Shirk, the Friday starter, and Justin Reimer, the shortstop. A lot of big time prospects there. Not necessarily big time prospects, but big time prospects for that level of baseball. I don't think any of these guys are going to be, first day draft picks for sure. And, you're probably looking at them, most of them in the 11th round and on. But, still, these are draft prospects that Arkansas is going to be facing this weekend against Wright State. Bubba, when you look at what Wright State did last week against Kentucky, how much does that get your attention? And they lost a series. They went 1-2 in Lexington. They lost 8-3 on Friday. won 12-9 on Saturday and got beat really bad, 15-0 on Sunday. But when you see that against another SEC team, an SEC team that has not played up to the caliber or near the caliber that Arkansas has played the last several years, what do you take away from what Wright State did against Kentucky?
Well, it just goes to show you in today's game anything can happen. And like I said, you get a good Friday night guy, a good Saturday guy going. I mean, it's that it's not going to be a cakewalk for us. I mean, we're going to have to go out and execute and play Razorback baseball because I think this is going to be a pretty scrappy little team. They're a veteran team. They got everybody back from last year, and like I said, they're strong up the middle. So, the thing with Kentucky, it's hard to say, okay, well, they did this against Kentucky because sometimes Kentucky will just roll out and just kind of pee down their leg and just not even show up. Other times they show up and they're a pretty good team, so it's so hard. If you were asking, okay, if they did it against Vandy, then I could give you a pretty good assessment, Matt. But against Kentucky, holy cow, who knows? Who knows what team showed up that last weekend? But I think they're going to be a formidable opponent. They're going to come out and hey, they're coming here expecting to win a couple games.
Wright State is 2-5 this year. They went to Hawaii on opening weekend. You talk about tough is making that trip from Dayton to Hawaii and then playing all those baseball games. And I think that might have affected them a little bit. They went 1-3 on their trip out there. And again, they're 2-5 coming into Baum Walker. Okay, now Bubba, I'm going to ask you this. Let's do a little Wright State trivia. Do you know where they're located?
No.
they're in the Dayton, Ohio area. I think is it Fairborn, Ohio? I think is where they are. It's a little school of a little under 10,000 is their enrollment on their main campus. They've got two campuses, but their main one there is in the Dayton area. Now I'm going to ask you this. Do you know how Arkansas and Wright State are linked forever?
This is probably something I should know, Matt, but tell me.
I'm going to try to play something for you here, Bubba. This is the Wright State fight song. You ready for this?
Yes.
All right, here we go. All right, sound familiar?
Yeah, it sounds real familiar. Did they steal our fight song?
They did. They did. In fact, I'm going to tell you how I know this. When I was in college, I think it was my freshman year, maybe my sophomore year, but Wright State was playing in the NCAA basketball tournament. And, I'm watching, this is like Thursday or Friday before spring break. Nobody's going to class. You're sitting around watching basketball. Everybody's, they're getting ready to go off to Panama City or go on their ski trip, wherever they're going for spring break. And so we're sitting around watching basketball and Wright State's playing. I think they've gone on this little run and the other team calls a timeout and Wright State starts playing its fight song. And somebody I'm sitting with is like, they stole our fight song. And every time Arkansas plays Wright State, they played the women in the NCAA basketball tournament a couple of years ago down in Austin. I always like to remind people that Wright State and Arkansas have the same fight song.
I did not know that. Now that surprises me. I could see Ole Miss doing something like that, but not Wright State. Come on. I mean, that's pretty bad when you got to steal someone's fight song. But oh well. Hey, we'll have to take it out on them this weekend.
So let me ask you this: you think like at the games this weekend, whenever Arkansas say they get a win or something, and their fight song plays over the loudspeakers at Baum, you think the Wright State players are sitting there singing along with their words?
Yeah, that's a great question. We might want to mix it up a little this weekend, but I don't know. It might fire those guys up a little.
You think it'll confuse them? Like they think, hey, these guys are being real gracious hosts and they're playing our fight song. Because I can't imagine a lot of Wright State baseball players know that they've got the same fight song as Arkansas.
You need to ask that question when you do your player interviews. Ask one of those guys if they know that. Play the song and see if they know what it is.
If Wright State wins this weekend, can I get you to sing their fight song on the podcast next week?
Hell no.
I'm going to send you the lyrics. You can just read over them.
Okay.
What do you expect to see from Arkansas this weekend?
I really think that we're going in the right direction. I thought our offense looked good this weekend. I thought we made good adjustments at the plate. I really like our starters. it's really good to see McIntyre back. I thought Hagan Hagan wasn't his best, but he got through it. I really love Hunter Holland. He wasn't his best either, but able to work out of a jam in the first inning. And McIntyre changing that arm slot was huge for us. So I like our starters. I still like our bullpen. I know we've got the talent down there. It's just a matter of guys stepping up and getting it done. And I think there's a lot of focus right now on the bullpen. Don't forget what DVH said early in the year, talking about the bullpens, the pitching. It's the deepest staff he's ever had. All right. There's a lot of talent down there. Now, just because there's a lot of talent and they look great analytically, on all the technology, they still got to be able to step up on the mound, bow up, and get outs. And that's what we got to do, is find the guys that can do that. It might be a freshman, it might be a veteran guy, but whoever that is, they need to start stepping up. We got a couple more weeks to figure it out. But I expect a good weekend for us. I really do. Hopefully this rain's going to move out, and we're going to be in good shape this weekend and play some ball.
Yeah, Friday looks like it could be a little bit dicey with rain and even potentially snow that morning in Fayetteville. So it wouldn't surprise, as much as we'd hate to see it, maybe a doubleheader on Saturday, and you get into all kinds of conflicts then, because you've got the big basketball game on campus this weekend too against Kentucky at 1:00 Saturday. They want to keep those separate if they can, but at some point you got to play the games, and I don't think a lot of coaches want their players being out there at this time of year until 10:00 at night. And so you might have to play that baseball game at the same time as this basketball game. We'll see how that works out. You mentioned the pitching depth, and I had this question posed to me this week because, Van Horn made that comment in the preseason, said it's the deepest pitching staff he's ever had. Now, the second half of that was, but what you see on paper, we've got to get it done on the field. And obviously, in some cases, that second half hasn't been coming to fruition yet this year. But the question was posed, when it comes to pitching depth, is that based on potential, or is that pitching depth based on the number of capable arms at this point in time?
I think it's based on the number of capable arms at this time. I think you look, there's a ton of very capable arms down there in the bullpen. It's just a matter, can they figure it out? You look at some of the guys down there, Matt. Everyone down there is, 92 to 95. They've all got good breaking stuff. Their secondary stuff's good. It's just a matter. There's just a difference in good stuff and good pitching. I was a pitcher back in the day, but I wasn't a pitcher. I was a thrower. I didn't pitch. I just got up there and threw. I'd give it anything to have all the technology these guys have down here. That's why I quit pitching, and I like playing outfield and swinging a bat way more. But there's so much talent down there. It's just a matter of who's going to step up. Now, there's some young guys with really good arms that have been inconsistent. Gage Woods is a guy that, I've watched him pitch for a long time, and he is a strike thrower. He's a bulldog on the mound. I think he's going to figure it out. There's other guys I really like too. I really like Cooper Dawson. I think he's got elite stuff, and I think he's going to be good. There's multiple guys down there that I know are capable of getting outs. Dylan Carter's another one that I like, and he's got the stuff to get outs. Austin Ledbetter struggled a little bit. Austin's a guy that, a big time football player. Nothing phases him. He's been in he's been in the spotlight for years. He's given up a lot of hits. He left some balls over the plate. Matt Hobbs still has a lot of faith in him. There's multiple guys down there that can still come in. And I keep talking about Sean Fitzpatrick, the sidearm lefty. I might be the only person that loves this kid, but as I know, as a left-handed hitter, that is a tough look. He might be a guy that gets a chance to come in and get some outs. I just don't know how he can do against righties. I know in the scrimmage, he came in and struck out the side against righties, that last scrimmage that we saw. So, there's still a lot of potential down there. And I just think as we get a little bit farther along, I think guys are going to start to step up. What I don't want to see, Matt, I don't want to see our starters going 97 pitches, in February. every weekend, February and early March, because we don't want to wear them out. We want to have the faith to go to our bullpen, after our starters have, 80, 85 pitches, whatever the case is, depending if they're high stress pitches also, it makes a difference if they're high stress or not. But we want to have the confidence to go to that bullpen. And, with Dave, I call it his circle of trust. It's how many people out of all these names down there in that bullpen, I could read them all to you, but I'm not going to, out of those names, how many are in his circle of trust right now? And I can tell you that circle of trust is very small and it needs to get bigger.
Jake Faraday is another one who I think a lot of people expected something from this year, who hasn't pitched to this point this season. Struggled with his command during the preseason. We'll see if he rounds into form. And one other thing to think about, that comment about pitching depth, Van Horn made that comment before Jackson Wiggins went down. You lose Jackson Wiggins, that's 80 innings or more that you lose this year, that you're having to make up. And we've said this before, that if Jackson Wiggins is healthy, you've got a Will McIntyre, you've got a Hunter Holland in the bullpen, and that completely changes the look of your bullpen. So I think they're still kind of working through maybe how the Wiggins injury has adjusted what their plans were for the back end. Bubba, you're going to work with Chuck Barrett tonight on the baseball broadcast. I know you've worked with him before. Well, what's that like working with Chuck? Because a lot of people are going to be interested to listen to your broadcast, given the fact that, he was the voice of the Razorback baseball team for so long.
It's going to be entertaining. I'm looking forward to it. Chuck and I get along great in the booth. I love Chuck. I loved listening to him in football. I love listening to him in basketball, and it's a lot of fun to sit there next to him in the booth. Hopefully it'll be a good night for us. It's always more fun if the Razorbacks are playing well and we're playing Razorback baseball and we're out there, beating up on someone. It's always a lot of fun. So hopefully it'll be a good night for us. I'm looking forward to it.
Phil does a great job, and Phil's carved his niche. And I've always said Phil had such a tough job following Chuck, because Chuck was so good at calling baseball. But this is really neat when you get, and it's just for one game. It's because Phil's out in South Carolina with the basketball team at the SEC tournament. But, this is like if, Jack Buck or Vince Scully or someone were able to come back and call a game after they had retired. This is just something that's a neat treat, I think, for the Razorback fans, getting to listen to the guy who called over 1,200 games for them for so many years.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's fun. It's fun. And I hope Chuck enjoys coming back, but I know the fans enjoy it. Now, there's only one Phil Elson, and in my opinion, Phil's the best. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun having Chuck back in the booth tonight. And so I'm really looking forward to it. And I love Chuck, and we have a lot of fun also. He's just a lot of fun to be with in the booth. So it's going to be a fun night. So glad the weather's going to be good. Hopefully we get a good crowd in there and have some fun tonight at Baum Walker.
I know you would agree with this. For over 30 years, the Razorback baseball fans have been spoiled by the play-by-play guys that they've had on their radio broadcasts.
Oh, without a doubt. And you're right. It was, for Phil to come in and do what he did after Chuck left, it's pretty incredible, because Chuck was the man there for years, and everyone got spoiled with him, and now they're spoiled with Phil Elson, but look, we're lucky all the way around. I thought Brett Dolan did a great job at Glow Life Field. We had a good time there. Nicholas Batters did a good job this past weekend. He's a young kid, but he's up and coming. He's going to end up in the Royals Major League booth before it's all said and done. He's got a lot of talent. So anyone that fills in for Phil has a tough job, but I think I'm pretty sure Chuck's going to hold his own tonight and be in good shape.
Arkansas and Wright State this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for now. Those are all going to be afternoon games. But again, watch the weather, because that could have an impact on when or if they're able to play on Friday. Bubba will be there for all three games. I'll be there too. You can read our coverage at wholehogsports.com. We appreciate you joining us, and we hope to see you next week on the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast.
The proceeding has been a production of wholehogsports.com. Look for our latest podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast store. And visit us anytime at wholehogsports.com for the latest news and commentary.